Dr. al-Ansari, welcome back to 7:30.
Thank you very much for having me. Good to speak to you again, Sarah.
The US envoy says that he's hopeful an agreement will be reached in the peace talks. Is it actually realistic?
In our line of business, Sarah, you cannot afford not to be hopeful, so we're always hopeful, certainly. The talks right now on the framework around an agreement are taking place in Doha with each side separately. It will need some time. We're not there yet, but we're working around the clock with our Egyptian counterparts to get both sides closer to an agreement on the principles.
Now, he says there's a single sticking point remaining. I know you don't like to talk about the specifics, but is he overstating it a bit to say there's a single sticking point?
I mean, it's a very complicated process, and it's a complex document which we are discussing right now. You could say that. You could say that there is one big point, but I would say that it's more complicated than that. We have a lot of things that we need to discuss. We've made some positive steps towards an agreement on some of the principles, but you have to bear in mind, this is a framework for the talks. So following this, the proximity talks will begin. So it's still early on, but as I said, there was momentum that was built by the ceasefire agreement between Iran and Israel, which we have capitalized on. There's momentum created by the statements by the US administration, positive statements towards the need for a ceasefire. And I think we are at this moment closer than we were months before, but there are still a lot of things that we need to address before we can start celebrating the closeness of a deal.
Now, we've heard in recent days about an Israeli plan whereby they intend to move Palestinians to a large camp or humanitarian city, as it's been called, in Rafah. Has this plan entered the peace negotiations?
We are not privy to such a plan officially. As we've heard these statements in the media, but we have heard also 100 other ideas being floated around and projects being floated around throughout this terrible war. And most of these ideas that include the idea of relocation, displacement, are a terrible human catastrophe that just keeps on ongoing, where the generations of Palestinians keep being displaced into new areas, and it only creates more problems than solutions. So we have always stood against any type of displacement of Palestinians internally or externally, and we do believe that a solution in Gaza is one where the people of Gaza are entitled to remain where they and their fathers and their fathers' fathers have always been, and at the same time addressing the security concerns on the other side.
But to be clear, it's your view that such a displacement of Palestinians into the south of the country would be neither morally or legally defensible?
As I said, we've always been against any form of displacement in Gaza or Palestinian territories as a whole, or for any peoples around the world for that matter.
Now, both President Trump and Mr. Netanyahu claim that they are close to getting other countries in the region to accept to resettle displaced Palestinians. Can that be true?
I mean, I can only speak on behalf of Qatar, and I can tell you that we have stood firmly against any type of displacements. We've taken in Palestinian refugees and injured Palestinians to be treated here in Qatar, more than around 2,000 of them, but we are certainly against any type of forced displacement or for what is called voluntary exit, which is actually not voluntary. When you bomb the hell out of a region, when you put 2.3 million people in the eyesight of your guns for more than 2 years, you cannot call it a voluntary exodus following that. We do believe that the Palestinian people need to be given, first of all, hope. They need to be provided security and peace. And then the idea of relocation or displacement is not something that would solve the issue. What would solve the issue is 2 states for each of the people over there, and a Palestinian state that would allow Palestinians to dream of a better future for their children, rather than for just protecting their own lives for the time being.
Now, we know that the Hamas leadership has suffered enormous setbacks during this conflict. Obviously, a large number of the leadership has been killed. Who are you negotiating with now, given that so many members of the Hamas leadership are no longer alive? What does that mean about who you talk to?
So throughout this process, and since 2006, our interlocutor in the negotiations has always been the political office. This political office since 2012 has been located here in Doha. The members the political office who are some of them are the members of the negotiating team on behalf of Hamas are still there. We're still negotiating with them, minus, of course, the leader Ismail Haniyeh, who was killed in an Israeli attack in Iran. We still work with them on a daily basis. They are still here in Doha, and we relay to them the results of the talks over the agreement that is taking place right now, the agreement of principles. Nothing has changed in these parameters. I can't speak on the inside of Gaza and the leadership over there, but I can tell you that our interlocutors are still there, they're still functioning, and we're still getting the same mechanisms in place when it comes to negotiating between both sides.
Does Qatar endorse Donald Trump receiving the Nobel Prize for Peace?
I mean, for us, of course, we've been working with the Trump administration towards peace. We've been working with them on the ceasefire in Gaza, the longest ceasefire. And the terrible history of this war was created by working with President Donald Trump. He has been instrumental also in the ceasefire between Iran and Israel, and we are working with them on the DRC Rwanda, on Iran, on so many other files. Certainly, we are working with the administration on peace, but I won't comment specifically on your question.
Dr. al-Ansari, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.